So many people, and in this day and age, it's a trauma Olympics. That's the new sport. Well, you don't know what I went through. And it's like, are you carrying the torch into the stadium to compete for the trauma Olympics?
Welcome, everybody, to the Warrior Podcast. I have a long-awaited guest here, one of my dearest friends and somebody I would consider a big brother and a mentor. He was a former floor trader. Before that, he played college basketball for one of the greatest teams ever. We'll cover that. Started out as an Indiana farm boy. He is soon-to-be published author. He is... as I said, one of my best friends and the tallest person I've ever had in a chair so far in the podcast at 6'9", my dear friend, Tom Heitz.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. It's an honor to be here. I can't wait to be the person that's answering your questions and share some hopefully good stories that'll be funny, helpful, and maybe make you think and cry a little bit too. Nice.
So before we get started on your life story, we met on the trading floor. You were part of the tall guy crew. You guys came in a big van. I think at 6'9", maybe you were about the average size guy. You had Burkholder in there at 6'10" and 3/4. Grizz was in there. He had a lot of big basketball playing guys. And then you were a trader. You stood in front of me. And we got to be friends. And then we wound up taking martial arts together, which we'll get to that too. That's pretty hilarious. You and me sparring. It's like Bruce Lee and Jabbar in a Game of Death, right?
Game of Death, yes.
And then we lost touch for a while. And we'll talk about how we came back together. But start it kind of at your beginning.
Well, I was an Indiana farm boy, had two good parents, and raised chickens, pigs, cows, sheep, the typical thing you would do it on Indiana farm. And always loved basketball because I was a Catholic oops baby. 4 kids in 5 years. I came 9 years later.
Wow.
So
your family of 5 kids?
Correct.
And you're 9 years behind the next oldest,
yes.
Right? Wow.
Yeah, 4 kids in 5 years, and I came 9 years later. So I always told my mom I was a mistake, and she goes, "No, you were wanted." I said, and all of that, and then you named me Thomas. And she goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, there's peeping Tom, there's doubting Thomas." And I said, all these things that are negative. And she said, "Well, you were wanted and loved." So I remember that. So she was a good mother.
And I'm calling bullshit on that. Your mom probably felt that, but your dad was probably like, "What the hell? Are you kidding me? I thought we were done with this stuff, right?"
Well, that's a beautiful part. If he were alive, and he died in 1988 when I was 27 years old, he had a heavy aneurysm. I would have loved to have asked him questions. He went too soon, but at least I got 27 years with him. My mom died when she was 94. But that would have been one of the questions, like, "Dad, okay, let's be straight. When Mom told you that she's pregnant, what was your feelings? Come on, talk to me."
Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I know a lot about your story because we are as good of friends as friends can be. I know that you did a lot of stuff as a kid. You were in theater. You did plays and stuff. Take us a little through all that stuff.
Well, I did a little bit of everything. And in the theater, I loved that for whatever reason. Always been an actor that probably got me in trouble a few times. But for people that don't know, I was the 1977 Best Supporting Actor, Hamilton High School.
There you go. Always competitive even in that, right?
Exactly. Now, we didn't have many people because there was only 55 in my senior class. So you can imagine the school was very small. So basically people just rotated around, on the awards and everything. Almost like I think I was prom king a couple times as well.
Nice.
So there you go.
All right. So you played, you played basketball was your game. What was your highest high in high school? Like what Heitz is your name, but how high did you go in basketball in high school?
Well, we was a small school, second smallest school in the state of Indiana. At the time, we did not have class basketball. So we were ranked in the top 20 in my senior year. A lot of the big schools would not want to play us because they didn't want to be embarrassed. And we were just a great team, a community, the school, the coaches, everybody. It was just like the movie Hoosiers, exactly like the movie Hoosiers. And we were going along, had thoughts of getting into the state tournament, and we was cut short on a controversial play. And I remember I almost broke my hand. I hit the locker because they fouled me. It was obvious, and it's always a joke when we get together, these two teams, about what happened. But it was a good lesson in life that things don't always work out the way you expect them. And basketball and athletics in general was a great thing. And anybody that's played for an extended period of time, they can tell you that, sports, the military are two good things that really train you that things don't always work out the way you hope they would. But nonetheless, without that, I ended up making the Indiana All-Star basketball team, which was a goal of mine, and then going to the University of Kentucky, which was always the gold standard of basketball for college basketball. And I knew going in that I was going to be playing with the best of the best, which meant that I was going to be sitting the bench. Now, one of the cool things is, not so cool, somebody or a couple people had mentioned, oh, you didn't play that much. You sat the bench. You must not have been that good. And it used to bother me. Now it doesn't. Because saying you sat the bench for University of Kentucky basketball team is like being ranked 11th or 12th for Victoria's Secret's model in the world. You mean you didn't make the top 10? No, it's just 11th or 12th. Oh, you didn't make the top 10.
Can't be beautiful then.
Can't be beautiful then.
Can't be good.
Yeah, it can't be good, But I still got drafted in the 1984 NBA draft. And to give you an idea of my teammates and who I was playing with, that year, 1984, the famous Hakeem Olajuwon, number 1. Number 2, my teammate, Sam Bowie. Number 3, Michael Jordan.
Wow.
Number 4, Charles Barkley, I believe. Number 5 was Sam Perkins, North Carolina. Number 6, my other teammate, Melvin Turpin. And then down the road, then I was 161st player.
So you had 2 of the top 6 from your team.
Yes.
Right? The top 6 in the draft.
Now, 2 years later, another player that was a starter was Kenny Walker. He was also a lottery pick and a top 7 pick. So sitting on the bench with 3 top lottery picks, okay, if you want to criticize me for that, then go right ahead.
And on top of it, I mean, I'm not a sports guy. I don't follow it, but I am an athlete. So you're on the team. You're grinding out practice every day. You're guarding these guys, getting pushed around, pushing them around like your teammates. You're playing with the best every day. Just because you're not a starter doesn't mean like you're just a click off of what they are, right?
Well, you have to be. That's a point that I'm still revered there. All of us are. They treat us like kings still. 40 years after we graduated, they still treat us like kings. You need that, just like a military unit, just like a family, a good corporate structure. You need everybody working in tandem. If I was sitting on the bench, not practicing hard, complaining, that'd break down the whole system. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. Cliche, but true. So we worked as a unit. I could not have a bad practice. I never had a bad practice. Everything was 100%. That's one of the things I'm so proud of in my basketball career. I never gave it less than 100%. Even if I was sick, if I was injured, I was given that 100%. And when I got drafted, went to rookie camp, got cut after 3 days, signed a no-cut guaranteed $75 contract. Then they made me a free agent, so I'm still a free agent available. I had an option. I had an option to just quit, had an option to go overseas. I had a lot of great offers to go overseas. One of them was 7 months, $70,000 in France. That would have been tax-free, car and apartment. And people say, well, why didn't you take that? Well, I was burned out at that time. Now I know why. And I just wanted to get on with life and be done with basketball at that point. And I came right up here to be a trader. Now, after 6 months and almost 6 figures in debt, I'm like, I made a wrong choice.
What, in trading, you mean?
Yes.
All right, let's pause on the training because I want to backtrack on one question here. You've had this fire in your belly since you were a little boy, pushing hard in everything you do. You did the theater, and I think you told me you won some kind of casting contest with young kids, right?
Yes.
Tell me quickly about that.
That was 8 to 12-year-olds, and my father put me in as a 7-year-old, and I cleaned their clock.
And casting fishing lures into accurately, right?
Exactly. Now, here's a funny story about that. So the police department put that on. Earlier in the week, after that, I'd thrown some trash out of the car. And I remember my sister or mom saying, you shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, I wasn't thinking anything about it. So about a week later, there's a knock on the door. It's police. And they know what it is. I don't. They say, hey, there's a policeman at the door. They want to see you, Tom. And I was freaking. I wouldn't come out of my room because I thought that they had caught me and going to arrest me for throwing that trash out. What it was, they was delivering my trophy that I'd won and congratulating me. And my family got a big kick out of that. It's almost like, yeah.
So you were above the law at that time.
I was above the law. It was the start of my criminal empire. That was just the beginning.
All right. So what I wanted, you've had this fire in your belly about pushing yourself. Was that something you were born with? Is that something that was bred into you from being an Indiana farm boy with parents that never complained, Depression era people? What would you say?
Probably a combination of all of that. Mom being just hardcore Polish, as we know, being here in Chicago, they're tough. They're like draft horses with an attitude. And my mom was tough. My dad was tough. They grew up in the Depression. They didn't have time to figure out their pronouns and being offended because they're trying to eat.
Right.
Which an interesting story is, they said by being on the farm that they had a much better chance because they was able to grow food, have cows get milk, chickens, eggs. And in the city was more challenging. So I never really thought of that. So they went from that to Hitler, marching across Europe, not understanding what's going on, 1941 Pearl Harbor, everything, Cold War. And so that was the greatest generation, they call it. So my parents were part of that. So I believe that, part of that was just infused within me. Plus my brothers who were older, they all played basketball. And I just wanted to be competitive like that. And then, something we'll talk about, then trauma down the road, that was another thing that motivated me.
It's interesting because there is a science to birth order, and you had 4 siblings above you, and then you came 9 years later, which almost makes you like an only child. Right. And typically in that scenario, it's very easy for parents to coddle you a little bit more than they did when the first 4 came so tightly packed together. So I'm not sure if your parents gave you more attention than they gave the other ones or not, but you still had the grit, which is cool because you could have easily turned out to be the soft version of the Heitz crew because you were so far removed from the pack. You know what I mean?
That wasn't going to happen with my brothers or my sister or my parents. They put it on me hard. Now, were they able to spend more time with me? Yes, because my brothers and sisters were older. So naturally, they got to spend more time with me. And I didn't get hand-me-down clothes. I always hear that from my brothers and sisters. Well, you got new clothes, and we never did. I said, well, that's not my problem.
Right.
But, they still were competitive. They expected high standards. One of the things my mother would always say, the biggest thing I want from you is to never defame the family's name.
Wow. That's respect right there. She's teaching you respect. You'll earn it and you'll get it, right?
Yeah, and it was evident at both of their funerals, and even my brother's funeral. There were so many people there to pay the respect. And I still hear it because my mom was a nurse for 55 years, up until age 77. And she was a traditional white hat, stocking, skirt, not the scrubs or the pajamas, as she used to call it. I still have people say, your mother took care of me, or they took care of my father or grandfather. And to me, that's a great testament of a legacy that she lived by her creed.
While we're on your mom, can we expand on her a little bit? Because I know a lot about her and how much impact she had on you. So, I mean, she was a very, I'm going to say, tough lady.
Tough lady. She fractured her spine 3 times. And at age 68, when I was moving into my first house, had a sleeper sofa out there on the moving van.
Which those things weigh a ton.
Yeah, sleeper sofa, and it's hard to move them. I don't even want to move them now. And she goes, let's move it in the house. Like, really? She goes, yeah. So we move it into the house. And she goes, where's it supposed to go? I said, it's down the basement, Mom, but don't worry about it. No, let's get it down there now. So my mom at 68, after 3 spinal fractures, helped me move the sleeper sofa down into my basement.
That's awesome. And then obviously in a profession where she sees a lot of morbidity, if you will, like people are dying and stuff like that. I never understood how nurses could even take that. And she did it for so long.
Yeah, and you always ask about the origin story. And I ask her, what got her into that. When her grandmother was sick, when she was a little girl, she viewed the nurses and the doctors taking care of her grandmother, and it impressed her. So that inspired her to want to become a nurse.
Wow. And now your father, who was a different kind of character than your mother, more of an inward quiet strength than your mother. Do I have that right or no?
Yes, very inward, quiet. World War II, and then between World War II and Korean vet. He was in the Army. He was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. And then he re-enlisted and went to the Merchant Marines. I don't know why. I asked my brothers. They didn't know why. Might have had something to do with my mom, before they got married, that maybe she said no or something. So he said, well, okay, heck with it. I'll just go back in the military, re-enlist. I think that's part of the story, but I'm not sure. But yeah, he was a staff sergeant in the Army and then in the Merchant Marines. And the Merchant Marines, there was nothing going on, but he was in the South Pacific. So I think he was in charge of like moving the beer and things like that.
We already talked about, we'll get nitty gritty in this. Your father was not the kind of guy to say, I love you, right? No, and show affection. And it's funny because your dad was always there and my mother was not there for me. And she used to say, I love you all the time. Yeah. So I knew she did, even though she wasn't there. And you knew he did, even though he didn't say it because he was there, right?
Correct. And from his father, who I never met, my mother really got into it with him because he was yelling at my father, and my mother, in her Polish warrior way, got into him, said, you'll never yell at my husband like that again.
Wow.
And so I got the idea that, usually you try to improve upon your parents. So my dad was a good parent. He did the best he could given his skill set and what he knew. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. And then I was more gregarious and demonstrative with my kids, my two sons. So, but he did a good job. I know he was proud of me. One of the things I wanted to do, I didn't, is I had money to take him fishing. Right when he died, I was going to take him on a fishing trip that he loved to fish. I didn't. That's one of the things in being a country boy, I just never really enjoyed fishing. Hunting, yes. Fishing, no. But then he ended up dying in February of 1988.
So tell the audience how he used to enjoy the college basketball stuff you brought him to.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, the funny story is my dad, when my mom and dad were married, she smoked and he chewed dip Copenhagen. He said, no wife of mine is going to smoke. And she goes, if that's the case, then no husband of mine is going to chew. So she quit smoking. She never smoked again. He was sneaking the chew, and he did that for years. And I didn't know this because it was never an issue with me. He had threatened my siblings, like, you better not tell mom that I'm doing this. But I never had that. I always knew that, hey, dad was doing this, but mom always knew. And it was always a funny thing. She'd bring, lunch or dinner out to the field to him, and she'd say, yeah, I saw him spitting it out, wiping his face. And and then finally, when he had his first aneurysm, not the one that took him out, he came clean with her. And she's like, well, I always knew, but it didn't matter because I loved you.
That's awesome. He thought he was getting away with it. And she knew better and she let him be, right?
Yeah.
She didn't go back to him and say, hey, I quit smoking, whatever. That's pretty cool.
She wasn't vengeful. And that I picked up chewing when I was in college, weird, and then got to dip in, smokeless tobacco for a few years. So I'd go out there because his big thing after dinner is like, I got to go do some work in the barn. Well, what he wanted to do is just get out there and, have a dip and just be peaceful. So I'd go out there and, take a little pinch between my cheek and gum and be with him. In fact, that's how he died, with a pinch between his cheek and gum.
Yeah, that's the way to go. So we're right at the point in your story where you're fed up with basketball, and we've just kind of talked about your mom and dad. Do you want to talk about who was really mentoring you the most at that time, your big brother?
Oh, yeah, my brother Jim, my oldest brother. He was 14 years older than me. always seemed to take me under his wing. Probably the most influential at the time for my basketball, because when I was in fourth grade at Catholic school, he put me on the sixth grade team that he was coaching.
Wow.
And so from fourth grade to sixth grade, there's a big spread in talent and strength and everything. So he put me on there, and I got abused. Like, that was tough, but that got me started, and I never gave up. So, and I remember some of the kids in the neighborhood when we'd moved to the city, small city of Garrett, 5,000 people, we were out there stealing cigarettes and, part of my crime thing. And he found out about that, and he just really got on me, made me run. I was crying. I remember I was so embarrassed. But didn't stop the little petty things, because I would shoplift too. That's something. I don't think I've ever said that. At the 5 and dime store.
Yeah, I shoplifted too, so
Yeah.
we can both go to jail now.
Yeah. So, it was hard on the streets, Frank,
Town of 5,000.
I had to get that penny candy, to survive, make the family whole. But,
so it's so interesting to me that how your brother, he was 14 years older than you, that he took such an interest in you.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever been able to figure that out? Like what happened there? Like the why of that, or?
He and I were similar. Were my brother Mike and Phil, great brothers, were more similar. And my brother and I don't know, I just felt like probably, as the youngest, he had to look out for me more. All my siblings looked out for me. They were great. My brother Mike got me into basketball camps. My brother Phil would play one-on-one basketball with me, endless hours. My sister Rosie got me my first job at her dairy tree,
Wow.
Her little drive-in. I was making $0.25 an hour. All I could eat. She said I ate more than I made.
I've seen you eat before, so I could vouch for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, I don't know, she'll know it now. She watches this. I had a little extra side gig going. I'd go buy some fresh cider, and I would sell that at the window. I'd put a little sign up, so much for 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 16 ounce.
You were running a little side business out of there?
Side business in there, and
that's
people were doing
mafia.
it. Yeah, that was mafia. So that was, now that I'm talking about this, I had a lot of crime things going.
Yeah.
And I hang around you, the Sicilian, so I don't know. But yeah, so all my siblings were great, and my oldest brother took care of me, looking out for me. But my whole family did. We were a good unit together.
Yeah, and I've learned that about you guys. Very loyal to each other, very strong family bonds, which is awesome. Your brothers are all taller than you?
Jim was 6'11", Mike was 7 foot. Is 7 foot. He's shorter now. My brother Phil, 6'4", could 360-degree dunk.
Wow.
Never played organized basketball, but and my sister's 6'4", and I'm 6'9", so I'm just kind of at the average.
And it's so funny because your name is Heitz, and your nickname at Kentucky was
Skites, and that was about being able to dunk. And then my teammates would kind of kid me because I would take off from the free throw line, or just ungodly things like Michael Jordan, and I could dunk from the free throw line just like Kenny Walker, but I would miss them sometimes and get hung up on the rim. So it was Sky Heights.
So we've talked about this before, and I noticed from us sparring together, your body you're so bottom heavy, like you have a monster quads, and your upper body is almost more like a runner type body, and your legs are like a power lifter, right? So you did some things, and you had some weightlifting achievements in college, correct?
Right. And basketball players, just like baseball players, are different in their strength. Baseball players have forearms that are just huge, and rotational power for hitters, pitchers, and outfielders have something different. Basketball players are known for their core, from around the chest down to their knees, just ungodly strong. I just happen to be really strong in certain areas. Like we would lift weights where the football team would lift weights, University of Kentucky, SEC. And they had a board. They had 3 boards. You could bench press 300 pounds 3 times, squat 500 pounds, or clean 300. I qualified on 2 of those boards. I was able to squat 500 pounds. You have to do it 3 times at a 90-degree angle, your knees. And clean, I got up to 315 pounds.
That's 6 plates.
Yeah.
So that's remarkable because I'm a foot shorter than you, and I'm made for powerlifting, and I could never squat 500 pounds.
But now you were a bench presser.
True.
Now, what I could bench press would be the bar with a spotter.
Well, you were exaggerating, but
I mean, I was really weak on the upper body and the chest. It was just the core, and my legs were extremely strong, but the chest, no.
Let's pick up where we left off with your timeline. We talked about your mom, dad, and your brother will be prominent in the story to come up. So you were sick of basketball, and you started. Is that when you started on the trading floor?
Yeah, there was a booster that thought I'd be good at this, got me up here. I was ill prepared to do it, and I was.
What's a booster?
From the University of Kentucky.
Which is what, just somebody who follows the team, supports the team.
Correct. He thought I'd be good at this, tall, can count, do all those things, strong. And I was built for that. But ultimately I spent, 10 years on the floor, and did moderately okay, but nothing to shake a stick at. And I think after 10 years, after you take out the lease and everything, averaged about $45,000 a year. That's it. And the lease was anywhere from 30 to 60,000 a year.
Right.
So for all the risk that we take, as you know, that was not, a big, a big thing. And I just never really enjoyed it. I didn't like the stress. In fact, what I did enjoy is that 1 month that I did filled paper, and I made like 40,000 that month.
Good. For people out there, filled paper is a slang term for being a broker. You're buying and selling as instructed by the customers. You don't make, you're not trading your own account. You're making money off of how many orders you fill. So you did that for 1 month?
1 month. I just knocked it out of the park, and it was easy for me. Now, it's tough, as you know, but it was easy for me. Like basketball was hard, but it was easy for me.
Right.
Anything in athletics. Trading was just never something I got enjoyment from. My best day trading was on a day that the Fed lowered or increased the Fed rate. And I had 100 lot, and I ended up making 33,000. I go home. That was 1992. And I get inside my door, and then I just think about it and just started just crying. Like, this is not even enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Here I have a great day for me, and it was just like, it was nothing. And that was almost, I traded another couple years, but that was almost the end right there. It's like, it wouldn't matter how much I make. I don't get juice from this job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I would go out and speak and get $25, I'd feel like I was on fire. It was great. And that's what I do a lot of work with now with people, of finding what you're good at, what the market wants, and what the market will pay you.
And I think I forgot that in the introduction, part of what you do is public speaking and life coaching. And you're the founder of Trucking Warriors, and we'll get to that, but that's another venture.
Which is fulfilling in so many ways, and we'll get to that.
Right.
We're trading, a great profession. A lot of people love it. I learned a lot from it. Would I go back and change it? No, because you and I talk a lot. Even the things that were bad in our lives, we wanted that to happen now that we look back, because that made us a stronger version of ourselves.
Right. We talked about these things many times, but in the time frame you were on the trading floor and not enjoying it was part of that because of things in the past that you were holding on to, do you think? Or it just was not for you?
It could have been, but I just think it wasn't for me. I like things in systems. I can take risk. It wasn't about risk because I was really good at sales. It was just a matter of, I just never, like going to Vegas. Like, if you would pay me $250,000 a year just to gamble, and I could keep everything that I win, and if I lost, it wouldn't cost me anything, I wouldn't do it. It's just not fun to me, And trading, even though there's a system and a method to it, felt somewhat like that. So a lot of people like that. And we know people that, gambled their money away in the pit. And we know people that have gambled a lot of money away in Vegas. And then people lost a lot of money trying to do offline trading.
Right.
Or online trading, off the floor.
Right.
So that just wasn't me. And again, you have to find what you enjoy and what you want to put your effort into. Trading was not one of those things for me. I just did it. And I didn't have anybody tell me to do anything different. The reason I got out was my first son was born. And 6 months after that, I was like, I'm done. Can't do this anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about Matsumoto and martial arts, because we both got into this true MMA style mixed martial arts. This was before they even had the MMA, where our instructor, our sensei Matsumoto, would do these cage matches where there were no rounds. It's just fight until you tap out or knock out, and there's not even a rounds or rest and things like that. And this is the guy we trained with. And I don't know what it did to you, but I know what it did to me. It gave me courage, because I was always afraid, like on the street, to get in a fight or whatever. I was a little cowardly that way because I was bullied when I was a kid. And now we're literally pounding on each other with bare knuckle shin kicks, where we take our shins and plant them into the other guy's leg.
Or forearms.
Yep. So we have to get to the famous leg kick story. So give us a little outline on the leg kick story.
Well, that's embarrassing. What are people going to think of me? Well,
I'm going to have a good life.
Yeah, you'll have a good laugh. My martial arts background was in college. I got up to a black belt at the local, whatever the style was. A lot of katas, a lot of weapons, doing this and that. And so that's one.
Which is not fighting at all. It's just all for show, right?
It's all for show, but you think you're a badass. You're a brown belt getting ready to be a black belt, right? So a few years later, Matsumoto, I hear these guys talking about him. And I said, okay, let's go there and have a sample lesson. So I'm all geared up, standing there sideways like Bruce Lee, not knowing, because that's how we did it,
And the tallest guy in the room on top of it, so they're going to tee off on you, you know that.
But I'm, standing sideways, Bruce Lee, like that was going to work. And his yellow belt, I can't remember his name, Japanese.
He was in from Japan, right, to train with Matsumoto. So he was a underling.
But he was a yellow belt, just getting started. So he winds up, hits me with a leg kick. His shin plants just above my knee on the side. And whatever the action is, physically, it numbed it. It went dead. I went immediately down because there was no feeling in my leg. I didn't know what we know now when we train. And so instantaneously, snot, slobber, and tears, and a quivering lip. I'm on the ground and like, what the heck just happened? What happened? And now most people would quit at that point. But I'm like, okay, I was wiping my nose, trying to get my lip to stop quivering because of my leg. I can't feel it. Wiping the tears off. I said, I got to do this and I got to train. And that's what I did for 2 years with a lot of great people, including you. And I'm ever indebted to Matsumoto because then I learned how to fight and defend myself and if needed, hurt somebody really bad. Mm. But also he wasn't the kind of teacher that would say, you go hurt people. He would always say, like, I'd make scenarios like, Sensei, if somebody does this and that, what will you do? He goes, I just give them my wallet.
It's so funny because, Brett Burkholder is a dear friend of both of ours. And, Mats was walking by the pit and Brett and I were standing outside the pit. And, we shook his hand and goes, Sensei, how do you fight this guy? And he looks up at Brett, he goes, 45, baseball bat, He's like, I don't want to fight that guy. So he taught us really well. And our dear friends, Jeff and Albert, mm-hmm. they were the first ones to train with him, and they were badasses. They were black belts in Taekwondo. They were tough. I mean, I thought Jeff was the toughest guy I ever knew. And when the day they trained with him, the following day, I saw Jeff in the pit, and I go, hey, how'd it go yesterday with that Matsumoto guy? And he rolled up his sleeves, and his forearms were like black because they were thinking they're going to outshine the master, right? Which we know is a mistake. Right. And they were disrespecting him. And Mats was literally bare knuckling them right in their forearm bone. So they didn't even want to keep their guard up to protect themselves.
And their legs.
Yeah. So, and then Albert came in, same thing. And they realized, like we realize, once you get into that first little sparring match, you don't know shit. Like,
Yeah, you
don't know anything.
You haven't been hit or kicked like that ever before with the kind of pain and intensity. We would come and look, and the movie Fight Club, and all those guys in Fight Club, black eyes and all that. We'd walk into the pit and say, we'd look at each other kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, we were always coming in bruised and battered all the time. I'd get home from a lesson and, Dorothy would give me she was the doctor examining me, and she just nodded her head because I had bruises and stuff all over me.
Oh, blood on the gi, from the nose and cuts and everything. It was brutal, but it was true fighting, If you don't know how to take a punch or a kick and handle pain, you're not going to be worthwhile on the street.
Yes.
But then the biggest thing, too, is it's not about being able to fight. It's about being able to have some mental self-control. I don't know, there's been several times, since I've trained, and you too, where we could get into conflict and we just learn to walk away.
Right.
We know, and Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL, talks about a lot. It's like, I'll do everything I can not to fight.
And the thing is, we took enough beatings voluntarily where we knew we could take a beating and we knew we could deliver a beating. So we didn't have that macho male ego thing driving us to prove ourselves on the street. Street fights, when I see street fights, I get a sick feeling in my stomach. I don't even like to look at them. It's not like ring fighting. And I don't want to be involved in a street fight ever. So so knowing we have the tools to handle ourselves, we only would use that in a self-defense mode. There's really no reason to do it in an offensive mode unless it's...
Yeah, and then there'd be more things than what we learned, too, in a street fight. I'm going right for the eyes, and it's going to be brutal. And the way I told one guy on a fight, or a potential fight, I said, if you want to do this, it's going to be cops, coroners, and the court system. I said, I'm either going to get hurt or die, you're going to get hurt or die, or we're both going to get hurt and die. What do you choose?
Right.
And he's like, whoa. And then that's when I just said, okay, everything is good, and walked away.
Yeah.
And that was the best fighting technique I've ever exhibited on my own, because I was at that point ready. It was in a dark part that I was going to take him out.
I had a beef with somebody in the pit who was regarded as a pretty tough kid. And he got in my face and he's like, let's go. So we were walking off the floor and I was just calm. And I said, look, you want to go out and do the man dance, I'll do the man dance with you. It's not going to end well for either of us. I didn't say for you. I didn't threaten him. I said, and I go, look, I tried to explain to him what happened in pit. He's like, sorry, I'm having a bad day, pump, let's go back to work. And, I was calm about it. But I didn't want to go out there and fight the guy, even though we fight all the time. Fighting in the ring is like a sport. Fighting on the street, you got to go into kill mode. You got to really hurt somebody.
That's the only reason to fight, in my mind, is to protect yourself, and it has to be lethal. And somebody said one time, because I talked about being with knives and guns and being trained on that, it's like you're a Jason Bourne. I said, no, I have my head about me. I'll know I can take care of myself or loved ones, but that's the last thing I want to do.
Right.
And if I had to fight anybody right now, it wouldn't be as smooth as 20 years ago. And there'd be people that could kick my butt. So I know that. But I'm not afraid of anybody. Zero. Because I always know I got the walk away power, and I'll get away with my mind first, or if I have to physically. And the third option would be just take lethal action. And I don't want to do that. I'm not one of those guys where I'm just like, I'll shoot him or I'll kill him. Yeah.
So,
and then what you're going to do? Yeah.
So you have 2 sons and I have 3 sons. And, I did martial arts a lot longer than you did, I think, with Matsumoto.
And I remember I was a brown belt before.
Yeah. You were a brown belt in katas. My boys would see me come home all beat up and they'd see me practice on the bags and stuff. And, I believe it's a good thing when sons have a little physical fear of their father. It helps you execute the rules and regs a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, when they were older, they were like teenagers. I'm like, do you think you guys put together could take me in a fight right now? They're like, no. I go, by the time you realize you can't kick my ass, I'll be so old, you'll feel sorry for me anyway. So I don't mind having the fear factor over you now. I mean, they could, the three of them right now, they'd bury me in 10 seconds. You know what I mean? But it's nice to know that
And
they
me
don't
too.
know that.
And me too. Yeah. Now, if it was a fight to the death, it might be a different story between you and I. And
Well,
them,
yeah,
you know what I'm
because
saying?
we're gritty old men. We know how to fight dirty. So they don't even,
Exactly.
and they don't have that dark force inside them yet that we do, which
Right.
we've talked about that before too. All right, my friend, where do you want to go with this? We talked about the trading floor. You met a lot of good people on the trading floor. All those guys like Brett, a dear friend, Bob Levinson, great guy.
All good guys. And I'll tell you, the first one that I met on the floor was Burkholder, because tall guys always look at each other.
Right.
Like dogs sniffing each other's behind, walking in a circle, you know. It's like, yeah, who are you? Or where'd you play? And all that. And Brett's a naturally nice guy. You know, we hit it right off. He played basketball at DePaul. Then I played at Kentucky. We played in some leagues together, and just, it was Brett's, the reason I stayed on the floor is because of him, because I was really wanting to get off there. And he invited me down to his place, his apartment in Lansing with his wife at the time, Carol. Well, still his wife. And I remember I was so broke. You know, there's Bills, there's Williams, and then I had Williamsons. You know, I had bills I had to pay, debts. And it was 40 cents to get on the tollway, you know, each toll station. So I was making it through without paying. The last time I saw the attendant there walking around, I threw in like 2 cents. And usually they'd let you go. Yeah. And he goes in there and looks and he goes, "There's only 2 pennies in there, man." And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know what happened." And he gives me a little sheet there to send in the 38 cents. You know,
That's hilarious.
But that's how broke I was. And then Brett, you know, took me in, fed me, kind of like what you do now, feeding me well.
Tall guys got hollow legs.
I know
that's
we
all
got
I can
hollow
say.
legs, but and so he showed, you know, grace and benevolence, and you know that's what kept me in the game. So I'm forever indebted to Brett Burkle, the big guy. So when he watches this, thank you, Brett.
Yeah, and thank you, Brett, because you were good to me too. You were an advocate for me and supported me when some of the team didn't, and we won't mention any names, but that's all come full circle. So thank you, big brother. And you want to talk about that Polish gorilla strength? Brett at 6'10" and 3/4. I saw him. I think it was CAG. Remember CAG?
Yeah.
So CAG was stocky, maybe. He had to be at least a 200-pounder, and he charged over to Brett to yell at him for a fill or whatever. And Brett leaned over the rail, and he grabbed CAG by his lapel, and he lifted him up off the ground. He was literally dangling. He was curling 200 pounds in his hand. He wasn't going to hit him or anything. And I was like, damn, this guy's strong. And then we were playing poker by Tommy Arundel's house, and we were all a little tipsy. And Jimmy Arundel and Tommy Arundel were sitting on either side of Brett, you know, and Brett was tipsy, and they were fucking with him a little bit. And he just did a little rabbit punch like this, and he did a little rabbit punch like that, and he hit them both, and they literally flew off the chairs like they got hit by Neo in the Matrix. You know, they would fly like that. It was so funny. It's like, man, I would never want to mess with that guy. And that's why Matsumoto said he would take him in a 45, but he wouldn't want to get in the ring with that guy. So, yes, Brett, evil strong. Where do you want to go with this now?
Well, that was trading, yeah. And first son was born.
Tommy Jr.
Tommy Jr. left 6 months after that, was married, got married in 1992.
To the lovely Carmen Heitz.
Yep, Carmen Heitz. Been married 32 years. We have 2 sons, Tommy Jr. and Robert, which I just got back with a trip with Robert out in Colorado, which was good.
Yeah, that's awesome. They both look a lot like you, too. You could tell that they're your boys.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. Not the milkman.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's one of the things I'm most proud of, too. Basketball, I maximize my time with basketball, and I maximize what I could do as a father with the skill set and knowledge that I had. And so that trip to Colorado was basically my youngest son said, "I want to do this with you, Dad." So we did.
Nice.
You know, there's a lot of people that they don't have that relationship with their kids or their father. And I'm very fortunate to have that.
I'll just share a father story with you. My middle son was in the basement playing a video game with one of his buddies in another state. You know how they were all linked up with the headsets and they can play from anywhere. And I just went down there to talk to him about something. And so he paused the game, but the audio was still going. So his buddy heard the whole conversation. And then when I left, his buddy goes, who was that? He goes, that was my dad. He goes, you talk to your dad like that? You talk to your dad about stuff like that? He goes, all the time. He goes, I could never talk to my dad like that. That made me feel good. So it's nice to have that with our sons. So,
yeah, you put in that time, and could we have done better? Probably. But you know what? Just like my father did the best he could, given the skill set and knowledge that he had, probably the same thing with my grandfather, his father. You have to look at that and say, you know, did I do the best I could given the skill sets and opportunities I had? And with my kids, I'd say yes.
At this juncture, because I know your story, we have to maybe circle back to your brother Jim and even go back a little further with the traumas, because that's kind of played a role where we're going with the story, correct?
Correct. And probably the trauma that I'll just start right off, that's the trauma, sexual and physical, is what really fueled my basketball career. And I'll get to that. Fueled my need to do martial arts and weapons training. Fueled my need to be a good father. That goes back to when I think I was about 10 years old. And, well, let's go back farther than that. I was in second grade Catholic school, Garrett, Indiana. Substitute teacher. I was making noises or something, trying to, be a clown, get some attention like little kids, nothing bad. And she comes out from behind that desk like a linebacker, sacking me like a quarterback, pulls me out of the chair, elevates me because she was huge. And I can remember her yelling at me and spittle coming out of her face. And I was built like Woody from Toy Story. So I didn't have a lot of meat on my bones. And I felt so humiliated, And when I circle back to or go forward in the story, I was really embarrassed. There was nothing I could do. That was one. There was another time in school, I think I was 11 years old on the bus driver. I don't know what I did, nothing bad, but he was kind of a mean guy. Pulled me out of the seat, ripped all the buttons off my shirt. And I remember getting home in the country. And my mom saw me. She's like, what happened? And I'm kind of whimpering, crying because I'm embarrassed and frustrated. And I told her, she goes, get in the car. Went over there and saw him. She ripped into him. And his head was down and he apologized. But that point, Frank, I was emasculated. It's like I couldn't defend myself. Here's the second time. And my mom had to come to my defense. Dad didn't know, because mom would take care of things if needed. Nothing against dad, it was just mom was there.
Right.
But she was tough. But I just felt so, here's a second incident I couldn't defend myself. The third thing was I was riding my bike out in the country at an old abandoned rest stop. And this van pulls up. Guy gets out, opens the side door, sits down next to me, and it was basically a sexual assault. And, it could have been worse. I could have been dead. Don't know who it is. You don't say anything about those things because you don't know. I mean, what are you going to say? I mean, it was of the era. It was embarrassing. Number one, I didn't really understand what happened. And number two, if I tell my parents, am I going to be the one that's the reason it happened? Fault, you know what I'm saying? So life went on. But because of that, now you have those 3 seeds of trauma planted. And this is common. I'm not saying me as a victim because I'm healed now. So I'm saying this as an advocate and a voice for people that this has happened to. You're okay. You can be okay. Find some help. Talk to somebody. It might feel embarrassing, but if you don't do something worse can happen. That's what almost happened to me, and we'll get to that. But those were the 3 trauma incidents in my life. There were others, but those are the 3 main ones that fueled my basketball. always trying to be the best.
So I want to pause you on that because some people might be a little perplexed. Like, okay, so you had a substitute teacher that roughed you up. I mean, that's bullying. At that moment in your life, you are completely helpless.
Correct.
You're by yourself and helpless. I'm not going to compare it to being raped, but when you're raped, you are helpless. These are things that I've read. So that, as a little boy, that's like really in your little brain, super trauma. And then, like you said, with the guy pulling you out of the seat in the bus, you just lost your manhood, gone. So when those seeds get planted, and then the third one too, that stuff doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away, and it doesn't mean it's final. And that's what I want to emphasize. Again, I'm telling you, and you know that I'm coming from the scars, not the wound. Mm-hmm. I've healed that. I've forgiven. That's a superpower now. And I wouldn't change those things, as crazy as that sounds, because that's what made me who I am today, the best version of myself, the toughest version, being able to handle myself, my emotions, and also, more importantly, help others, through their path, personally, professionally, financially. And that wouldn't have been able to happen had these trauma incidents come about.
And you and I, when we kind of rekindled our friendship, you did, we started talking about this stuff a lot, the trauma that you had, and you were still holding on to it. So
it's dark energy, it's fuel, it's positive fuel. Here's a big thing, and it's a statistic. I think 25% of female athletes in the NCAA in college have had some type of sexual incident. I would say it's higher. Males, the same percentage, but I'd say it's much higher because males are more embarrassed. And I'll tell you a fact about this, because somebody said, well, why would you even talk about that? Why would you even say anything about that? Why would you even say that, you had some suicide ideation? And I said, here's the reason. So far, 3 people have reached out to me and told me about their sexual abuse. I've never told anybody, but I feel comfortable telling you. Thank you for sharing your story. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sharing the story to feel sorry for me. Mm-hmm. It's sharing the story to say it's possible to overcome that. But also, if you haven't dealt with it, to find a way to deal with it. Because if not, it'll just grind at you.
You and I've talked about this quite a bit. It almost always, all roads lead to forgiveness. Like, that's the necessary component. If you cannot forgive the abuser, it's really hard to frame it out in a way that serves you, right?
Absolutely. And where this all happened, and should we kind of go into the truck, why I got into the truck? Or
well, let's go backwards a little bit, because you had one other traumatic thing, and that was the loss of Jem, your brother.
Oh, yes. I'm 21 years old, living my best life, playing basketball, University of Kentucky. Everything seems to be firing on all cylinders. My brother comes down to visit. It's in May. He goes out to the bar, and he comes back and tells me, oh, this is great. These girls think that I'm you and all this, and I'm horrified. So
this is your brother's 14 years older than you. Yes. You're on University of Kentucky basketball team. He's visiting, and all these girls think he's you.
Right. He's out the bar doing his thing, and, we still looked alike, even though he was 14 years older. I was like horrified, and he said, no, it's okay. I didn't do anything crazy. And I felt so proud because, it was something I got to demonstrate to him that he got to take advantage of, kind of like my father did, and my mother in some way as well. And a week after that, I get the call that he'd been in an accident. And it was at the lake. And I'm like, well, what happened? Where's he at? We don't know. I'm like, what do you mean we don't know? He was in his boat, his jet boat, and 2 of them collided. Long story short, drunk driver. She was in the boat, other boat hit him, and he was a passenger, and it just killed him. I get on the plane thinking maybe there's some hope he's still alive.
Because they told you they don't know, right?
No, the boat sank. They couldn't recover his body. I volunteered to go to help identify the body, hoping that, he'd still be alive, like he crawled ashore or something like that, which, the likelihood of that was small than nothing. So we go there, the lake. I get there. The frogmen, whatever from the county, you could see that they got something out of the lake, probably about 200 yards out there. They roll that boat in, and they said, "You family member?" I'm like, "Yeah." They go, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, it was like a CSI kind of crime scene. They roll that blanket back, and there he was.
Oh boy.
Lifeless, half his head just bashed in, gone. It was terrible. And I just collapsed on the pier. And our neighbor took me there, brought me home. And this is where my mom, she ran out, and she's very practical. She goes, "Did they find him? Is he alive?" Nah. She just dropped to her knees.
And that guy he was your guy.
Yep. Now, I'm sad about it, but I'm healed from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And here's what's really good. 2 years ago was the 40th anniversary. And this is the power of the mind. I've been doing a lot of mind techniques since I've been in the truck. I was able to go back to that pier. And a lot of therapists say, don't do this. I reintroduced the whole scenario, every bit of it, every feeling, smell, sight, sound. And it didn't affect me. In fact, I had tears of joy.
Wow.
Thanking him, God, whatever, for the 35 years he was on this earth.
And he's been with you the whole time, right?
Yep.
And then to go on the lighter side, but not so much lighter side, he left an insurance policy for you.
Oh, yeah. So that was about $100,000. What I did is I stimulated the economy for 18 months. I had a diamond pinky ring.
See, that's your Italian wannabe in you.
Yeah, it's an Italian wannabe. What else did I have? Leather pants, size 15 python skin cowboy boots. This was the 80s, 1982. So I am pimping. Okay. And in my keynote speech, I talk about how I lost about half of it to, somebody that was running a fund, a commodity fund. And I won't go into that. Just know that big investment guy that, I got taken. Okay.
And just to pause on that, when somebody comes to you and they're asking you for money because they can make a lot of money with your money, they would just be making a lot of money on their own money. They wouldn't be asking you for money. That's how I look at it now. So
Exactly. But you know what? You have to go to life school, and that was a high-level class that I
Hell
took,
yeah.
and I passed. Of course, you got to fail to pass, but, I passed, so that was a good thing. So I wouldn't take that back because I grew up in a great family. So there was some, being naive. And I was naive about that. I didn't have people telling me about money. I had my father would complain, say, you don't want to make more money because you just have to pay more taxes.
That doesn't make sense. But
that's a meme that gets in your head. Well, really, as you understand, you get smarter. You educate yourself on the tax code, which I have. You make more money, you can actually pay less taxes. A lot of people say that's not fair. But that's the law. You do everything you can within the law, and you got to be smart.
Right. Before we move past the spending of the money, you had a little funny story. It's morbidly funny, but with the funeral home, do you want to tell that one?
Oh yeah, my mom being a practical Polish woman. So my brother, when there's an accident like that, they have to do an autopsy. So they take the body, they do an autopsy. And when they do an autopsy, they cut you wide open. They cut in your skull, everything. Well, your body naturally is going to start deteriorating after time. So the autopsy took a little bit longer. And then we showed him for 3 days because it was, people wanted to see. We knew that in the family and whatnot. So get to like the second and third day, I see my mom reach underneath the casket at the funeral home, underneath the apron. She's got like a can of Lysol, and nobody's around. She's spraying him down. Like, what the heck, Mom? Well, he's starting to stink, and I didn't want people to smell him. And so it's like a Seinfeld episode, you know? It's like, oh my God. But it does happen. The body deteriorates. It's just a natural biological thing. And yeah, there was a little bit of smell coming from his decomposing body, dead body.
It's a good frame out to look at it as almost a comic, because you could look at it as horrific, right? Some people would do that, but your mom, what a warrior! Just so practical,
Well, she was so practical. I remember when I was trading Chicago, my father died. She said, "Get home," and he had a cerebral aneurysm. It finally took him out. You know, when the blood vessel breaks in the brain. And so I get there. She goes, "Well, put your hands on him," because he had died like 15 minutes before I got there. And you feel him? He's still warm. And I thought, well, this is just kind of weird. But Mom was just practical.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not alive. He's dead. But he's warm. So I just wanted you to know that. And it was just so kind of weird and freaky. But I got what she was trying to tell me is, you know, the body and the spirit are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a good lesson. And finally, when my mother-in-law died about 4 years ago, and I was there when she died in hospice, did the same thing, felt her, she was warm, but I also noticed that she was gone. You know, that there is something that really solidifies your belief in God or a higher power, whatever, because you just sense that energy is gone, but their body can still be warm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the completion of that story. And so now death to me it's just a normal thing. It happens. Here in the United States, we don't celebrate death. It's always like such a taboo thing. But now I look at it, and you and I have that same memento mori. You know, we all die. So let's live each day as it's our last. Because someday we're going to be warm, but without the soul and the spirit inside. That's my belief, and I'm sticking with it.
We definitely plug it into the spirit world. We shared many things. So you blew all the money, then you found your way to the trading floor.
Yes.
Didn't like that either.
Didn't like that.
Tommy was born. You left the trading floor. Now what?
A guy, Jim Ash, who was a family friend, had a big insurance brokerage agency, said, "You'd be good, you know, selling financial services, insurance or whatever." So I did like a 2-hour sales training in his office, and then went out and sold some insurance the next year. And then after that, I said, you know, I'd probably do better if I worked for you and your company, because I could learn more. And so I did that off and on for another 10 years or so.
Did you like that at all? Or
I liked the game of developing relationships. With the brokerage side that I did, it was getting other advisors to do business through our company. And I really enjoyed that. I was good at that. And so the start of the end was I got more traction in my sales, was doing coaching with them, teaching them how to coordinate their personal life and their professional life together. Because you get some people, they think it's all about the money. They make the money that's going to make their life better. It doesn't most of the time, especially when they have a foundation that's cracked. So that I did, ended up getting fired from the one job. And then that just took me into a real dark place. And then a couple of years later, we moved to Florida. I was working for a company down there, coaching their high-end advisors, enjoyed that. And eventually that went away. And then the trauma needed to start coming out. And I had no idea. I was getting this just really bad feeling that I just couldn't overcome. And I'd had this feeling really from youth. And you didn't know at the time, but this was all the trauma.
And the trauma is gaining interest. It's like an account, right? It's growing.
It's growing. You don't know it. That dark energy fueled my basketball career, because most top athletes have this, I tell you. And usually it's a sexual abuse or assault of some type, because I've had them tell me this. And it's like, wow, there's a trend with this. With any type of pain or trauma, you have to eventually heal it through forgiveness, but nobody ever tells you that. I'm telling people that now, but I didn't know that. And it almost took me to the point where I said, I'm going to end it all, because I didn't know. My best feeling, Frank, was just being numb.
That was your high during the day, just being numb.
Numb. If I were numb, that was a great feeling. And everything else was below that. It was a fight to get numb. From December of 2019, now that I've healed, I don't even get the numb. That's not even a baseline. I'm so far above that.
We'll definitely get expand on that. So December of 2019, would you say was your rock bottom, roughly in that area?
Rock bottom was 2018 before I got into trucking. And then the book is 18 months on 18 wheels. It took about 18 months of that solitude and grind in the truck and the stories that I write about that finally loosened me up to where I could forgive. Mm-hmm. I'd listened to enough podcasts where guys talked about being raped and whatnot. And it finally hit me, I got to do something about this. I've compartmentalized it and it all came to a head.
You called me up out of the clear blue somewhere before that time frame, and we hadn't talked since the trading floor, and we started to have nice talks once every couple of weeks and figuring stuff out, and then you disappeared. No phone call, no return call, no text, no nothing. You were gone for I want to say in my mind like 2 months.
Dark mode.
Man, I hope he's okay. And then you finally resurfaced and said, I got a CDL license. I'm a long haul trucker. I'm like, what? And you go, yeah, it's something I always wanted to do. And then you told me about where you were back a couple months ago. I didn't know that you were
the low point,
hovering around, the end of your own personal days. You were going to take the checkered flag voluntarily.
And that was out. And that's the first chapter of my book that I just worked on with my editor, sitting outside Rupp Arena where we played basketball. And I just was sobbing. I was walking the streets of Lexington like it used to be the epitome of my life at the time. And here I am now. I feel like nothing. Nobody loves me. I don't love myself. I have no hope. Things just seem to not work. And I'd probably be better off if I wasn't here. That's the lowest point right there. That was a rock bottom. I remember coming back to Florida. We had moved to Florida at the time. Tried to get a couple jobs, actually 3 jobs. I said, I'm just going to do something totally different. One was a bread truck, driving a bread truck, delivering in the morning. I got an email back. They found somebody more qualified. Like
driving
okay. A truck. I gave you my resume, cover letter and everything, college degree, all this experience. And okay. So that was the first one. The second one was transporting blood, blood samples or whatever. I even called the manager. I was like, well, we'll call you back if we think you're a good fit. I never got a call back. That was the second one. Then finally, looking online, I find this one that's like perfect. I'm a former triathlete. I'm in shape still. It was a bike salesman and manager. Well, hello. Perfect fit. I get the resume, cover letter, actually go down and meet the manager at the store in Fort Lauderdale. Nothing. Got an email back. We found somebody else to fill the position. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So I'm looking through and I'm seeing all these truck driving jobs, CDLA. I'm like, okay, I can do that. It's just driving a truck. I'm used to having big machinery when I was on the farm. I'll just go down there, license, pay the $50 fee or whatever, get the license and get trained and go. Well, it's not like that. It's a whole series of training and money. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. It's just driving a truck, really? So I talked to 3 friends, my nephew, a friend of mine up here, Gary, and another friend that said you need to talk to Joe Carr. And these 3 people set me up with 3 people who had college degrees, just like me. And for whatever reason, they were driving a truck. And so that convinced me that, okay, I guess I can do this and should do it. And that was the start. And I applied to the first company, and it was a young kid, the salesman recruiter. He was going to pay you like 29 cents a mile or something like that. And you'd have to drive with somebody else, a team driving. And he goes, this offer is on the table for 48 hours, and that'll be off the table. And even at that point, not knowing the industry, I'm laughing. I'm like, You're only giving me 48 hours. I mean, really, is that all I get? I can't get 72, knowing that I'm not going to take this job, but it was just kind of like, you're being disrespectful, right? He's like, nope, 48 hours. I mean, really, can you reconsider 72 hours? And in the industry, they're dying to get people, they'll recruit anybody. And so it was just kind of interesting. It's like, you only have 24 hours to decide if you want this timeshare or not. You know what I mean? Something like that. So that one went away. Then somebody said, hey, go to Schneider. And I applied to Schneider. Everybody was up front. And that's how everything got started. And you'll have to buy the book to get the rest of the story.
So now you're basically in trucking right off of your all-time low, right?
Correct.
So how does this transformation happen in the truck? What happens in a truck? I don't want to take too much of your book away, but
oh, you can take it. I'll give you the story. It's worse. It gets worse. In A Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell talks about, you have the intention, you go out there, you meet a challenge, you move forward, then you meet a bigger challenge. Well, it was much tougher than I thought. And at one point I said, I'm going to quit. And the one chapter was about this lady in the truck, about 60 in Pennsylvania. And I just, blown out the wheels of my tandem by hitting a cement pylon and some other things. And she was really nice. And then she started talking about the dark side of trucking. It's going to get you. It's going to be bad for you. And it's like almost another sign from God that if you're tough the way you think and say you are, then I'm going to challenge you right now. She rolled up her window. I pulled my curtains and just started sobbing and said, I'm going to have to get out of this truck and quit. I can't do this. So that was really the second bottom of my hero's journey. I went to bed, got up, and it was kind of like a Rocky thing. The music started playing. I'm like, screw this. I'm not going to get beat. I'm Tom Heitz. I'm honoring my brothers, my mother, my father. Get your ass in gear. Put it in gear, metaphorically and actually, and get rolling down the highway. And so that's what happened.
That's a playback of what your mother said about never shame the family name, right?
Yep. To quit trucking, it'd be like, oh, wow. Couldn't do that. Wasn't in my lineage to do that. But I had to be taken down. And that's a good thing about life when you understand. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. You'll feel embarrassed, but that's what you need to get tough and to move forward. Anybody that's had any kind of success has had those type of moments. You either hear about them or you don't. I'm actually fortunate to be able to share this on your podcast. This is what happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people. And unfortunately, some people haven't taken the next step.
So now you're driving in the truck, and because you are an analytical machine like I am, I make fun of you because you keep everything on a spreadsheet your whole life. Mm-hmm. How many hours did you sleep? What are the things you keep track of on your spreadsheets? This cracks me up.
I don't know. You're triggering me in trauma here. You're making fun of me. You're saying I'm granular? Is that what you're saying, Frank?
That's inside joke with him and I. He calls me granular and I call him granular.
Well, it's part of my thing that I teach people too. You have to inspect what you expect. Everything is quantifiable. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, well, what about love? That's just free. I said, okay, let me give you the scenario. You're married, have a wife or a girlfriend. Forget her birthday, anniversary, or Valentine's Day. What's going to happen? Well, what do you mean? What's going to happen if you miss those three key things?
Nothing good.
Nothing good. That's a metric. You measure that. You track it. Oh, I understand now. There you go. Whether it's money, whether it's your fitness, your emotional health, which I want to spend more time on, developing a program for that to make mental health not a taboo, but something that you take interest in, like your physical health. So, like if you feel sick or you have to go to the doctor, you go. Nobody's shaming you for that. Mental health, what goes on in your brain and how you think and feel should be the same way. I'm not feeling well. Well, let's diagnose this. Let's take this through a process. And I'm starting to work on that now and not make it such a taboo thing. Make it like, Yeah, I went to the doctor, got healed or whatever. It should be the same thing mentally. But there's also things you can do up to that point, just like with physical, eat well, rest, get some exercise, etc. Same thing with mental health.
So the reason why I brought up the analytical stuff is because now you're driving in a truck and you're driving with hazardous materials. You got kind of the highest designation as a trucker because you don't do anything halfway.
Right.
And you're starting to learn, like, this is not an easy job. It's technically not easy. And then you're on the road sometimes 10, 11 weeks. You're living out of the truck for 10 or 11 weeks. And anybody who thinks that's easy, I mean,
it's paid homeless. Okay. And the three things of a homeless person is consumption. They got to eat and drink. Elimination. They got to pee and poo. And rejuvenation. They need to sleep and rest. Same thing with a trucker, except we're getting paid for it, especially when you're over the road like me. And over the road means that you're not sleeping in your bed every night. And again, I drive a tanker, which most people drive a box truck, a long 53-foot one that's a majority of trucks out there. But I had to make it tougher on myself and do the tanker. Hazardous materials, getting that stuff on me. And in training, that eliminated almost 20% of our class. You got to get up on that trailer and walk without any guardrails or anything about 10 feet. A lot of people can't do that. And the guy that was one of the trainers, he's a former military, and he said, I love to see guys get up there and crap themselves and they can't make it. And I thought, well, that's not going to be me. I've skydived and all that. But I got up there and I started shaking like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this because 14 feet down, everybody's looking and you've got this like 12-inch wide, corrugated steel thing you're walking on. But I made it, got down, and that was all part of the training and what you need to do.
We're getting to the analytical part about trucking, right? You're paying attention. You're looking at the way they're managing or mismanaging. I could not believe through the hours, and we've talked certainly hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours. I don't know how many hours we've talked because when I work out or I do a 9-mile walk, you're on a 9-hour drive and we just talk and talk and talk. All the crazy inadequacies in the trucking industry, which we have a couple other friends who are in it too. My buddy John, Billich, and you guys have talked. It's the same thing. It's like almost absence of common sense sometimes. So now you're processing all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leading to what now?
So when I got the emotional healing taken care of, I started to look at the business. And the business is when you find a problem and you can solve it, that's where you can make money and have a viable, entrepreneurial type endeavor. And when I started to had a manager who was a former dance instructor, has a college degree, so do I. But she's never run a business. I have, and never driven a truck. I do. Tell me and my co-drivers, we don't know what we're doing, etc. That's a problem. So when I went to management, because she was unreasonable, not one you could really talk to, and outlined an 8-point plan of what I would do for free the first 90 days to help solve this, basically be kind of a leader out there, which truckers naturally migrate to me because I don't talk about me. They don't ask about my basketball. They don't care. They care that I care about them and give them respect, the number one thing that truckers look for. Manager said, I don't think we can do that. Like, okay. So within 6 months, 18 of us left to another company. And those 18 drivers equates to about $4.3 million of annual revenue. Now, when you do numbers, here's my sheets. It's pretty simple. 18 drivers that you could have just given a little respect to, that would have kept $4.3 million on the books.
Plus all the money that it costs to train them, right? That's all gone.
Exactly. One person. And I can spot these people because the same modus operandi in trucking happened in financial services. The thing with financial services and like real estate that you're in, you can't say I'm working hard and it's just not working for me, the market or the people. You either get it done or you don't, right? Oh, I had a lot of appointments today, but did you close any business? No, but people like me. Did you close any business? No. Basketball, athletics. Oh, the coach didn't treat me well. No, that doesn't fly. You either get it done or you don't. Same thing with trucking. You either get the load done safely, timely, and profitably, or you don't. And so athletes and truckers are the same to me. And I see that being a trucker, I should be respected the same as I was as an athlete, all of us. And we don't. And so they have over 100% turnover in the industry that costs the industry over $1 billion a year. So the problem to solve there is to teach companies how I can go in and actually drive their trucks, talk to their drivers. I speak trucker now. I'm bilingual. And then give an assessment of here's the problem and here's the solution, and then how I could execute it and then train other people to do it. That's very valuable. And that's in the works right now. Because, I mean, I'm just as comfortable in a hazmat suit and steel toe boots as a custom Italian suit and fine leather shoes. Put me in front of billionaire investors of a Fortune 50 trucking company and give me a day, give me a half an hour to prepare. Once I know some of the facts, then I can deliver that with confidence and effectiveness.
It's one thing you've always had an edge on me that I had to learn in more recent times is the public speaking. You just have no fear.
I don't, but now it was not always like that. I had to go into college where we were on media all the time, and I was terrible at it. Okay, but I wanted to become better. I remember the first speech I took was at a church. They wanted me to talk at a sports awards banquet. I went there, agreed to it, and then it was like, oh crap, now what do I do? I stood there for about 30 seconds. They introduced me and said nothing. And they must have thought it was part of the speech of humor. And then everybody started laughing, and that broke the ice. It was just like I didn't know what to say. I was about ready to, pee my pants or whatever. And then I got started, and then it was after that, it was much better. I got speech coaches. We got training. I would take all those speaking engagements that I could to practice, whether I got paid or not. And actually, I shouldn't have got paid because that was technically legal when I was in college. But I was a hustler. I would tell the secretary, Marta, any of them that come in, give them to me. I'll do them. So I was just traveling all around in the off season, doing these for $50 to $100, sometimes $150 a shot.
Nice.
Loving it. So, and that was my bliss. So that's what I should have done more of and been trained. But life had a different path for me to go trade on these promises of millions that didn't happen, which I'm not regretful about. Because again, not going through that experience, I never would have been the person I am today. I learned about people, as you know. You learn about people and when they're under stress, how they perform. The true essence of a person comes out on that trading floor under stress. And we saw a lot of that.
Before we get to Trucking Warriors, I just want to say that you and I have a pretty big Venn diagram, even though we're overlapping Venn diagram, even though we're a foot apart in height. And both of our superpowers is being able to talk with anybody and open them up like strangers on the street. And we love to do that.
Yes.
And I don't know why we're good at it. Is it because our life is an open book and people feel that when we approach them? Like
we're authentic.
Yeah.
We have accepted our strength. We understand our antiques in the attic, which a lot of people don't. They dismiss their strengths because people have shamed them for them. So we embrace that. And also the other part is our boogeyman in the basement. That's the other thing.
Thank you, because I wanted to get to that.
Yeah. And so that's the thing that we're embarrassed about, we're ashamed of. We don't want people to find out. What happens with a lot of people, they project their boogeyman in the basement onto other people, just being mean, negative, nasty. And we don't. We've already come to grips with who we are, what's happened to us. It's gut-wrenching, but we've accepted it and forgave it. And we've moved on, and that's powerful in people's minds.
The boogeyman in the basement is this dark energy we refer to, yes?
Correct, and that'll fuel you for a time. But it's just like in those cars when they use that, what, nitrous oxide or what is that, NOS? You know, in those
Yeah, nitrous.
you can't just keep using that because it'll burn up the cylinders. And that dark energy is the same thing. It'll do what it needs to do, fuel you in business, professionally, but eventually you're going to have to find a different source of fuel. You can't keep using that. And the worst thing, it runs out. It's almost like a drug addiction. You know, and speaking with that, I got into a lot of long distance triathlon training. And well, let me go back to basketball. Since most of my teammates, I believe, probably had their own trauma, I won't discuss that. They'll do that sometime. That the basketball was a natural, you know, sedative. It'd make you calm, make you at ease, get me numb, like I said, my best feeling. And then when practice was over, I'd say that half of us went to alcohol and the other half went to weed. I was on the alcohol team because you was just trying to numb out the pain. And did I ever have an alcohol problem? Probably drank too much. But then here again, what did I do? I started keeping a little paper spreadsheet of how many drinks I would have a day. And I did that for like 3 years because I was always fearful that I knew that alcohol wasn't good. And if I ever felt really bad, I wouldn't drink. But if I didn't feel really bad, that I would drink. See what I mean? But I would always chart that. I think the most drinks I ever had in a year was like 600. And that freaked me out. Like that's, you know, a little less than 2 a day. And I need to back it off. The dark energy would fuel your thing. Triathlons was great because I could get on a bike for countless hours, run, swim, and that would just anesthetize the pain. But again, you know, that's going to run out eventually.
Yeah. So we both read a little bit of Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power. He contends that we have this demon inside of us. I call it the Sith Lord, and you and I use that term quite often. It's Star Wars term.
Yes.
We all have that, and to deny it, it doesn't serve you to deny it. It's better to know that it's there, right?
Well, yeah. Now that puts me off on another point here. So all this trauma that I had trying to process, you know, my favorite things to do. Well, number one, I got into martial arts. I didn't know why. Well, I wanted to protect myself. Yeah, I do know why. But the bigger, darker thing is I would love movies like Death Wish, Equalizer with Denzel, Dexter. This is where it really got dark. Dexter, you know, the serial killer that works for Miami-Dade. He's a blood.
Yep. Dorothy loved that guy.
Yep. And how embarrassing is it that you tell, I couldn't even articulate why I liked those things. And I felt so ashamed. I felt ashamed that I wanted to learn how to hurt people. I wanted to learn how to, if needed, take it even further. That's embarrassing. Now I'm not embarrassed by it because now I know that that's a useful thing of be the beast that you need to be if needed. But you control that beast at all costs.
And it sounds kind of crazy, but it's calming. When we learn martial arts, we know we have a physical beast that was born into us, like we can fight.
Yes.
It calms us.
Mm-hmm.
But to know like this dark energy is in us and what we could do with that, because you and I go really deep in examining how dark we could get if need be. Like we talk a lot about the craziness in society and civil war possibilities and all this other stuff. We're going to be good to go because we know that Sith Lord is in us and we'll do whatever it takes. And it's calming for me. Hey, whatever I need to do.
Yeah. And we talk about it. You're more in tune with it than me. And I've always said that I don't want to live like Will Smith and I Am Legend.
Yeah.
You know, fighting the zombies or whatever. Or if I have to, I will. So up to that point, I can get ready quickly and can turn that on. But in the meantime, when I drive or I'm out there today, you know, and people cut us off or they do whatever, I just zen out and say, you know what, they're just having a bad day. And, you know, I just calm down. Somebody yells something like, yeah, you may be right.
And that's one of the things about being a trucker. You know, people are just assholes driving cars up against other cars, right?
You saw that today, right?
Yep. I was driving Triple T here, and we were in a left-hand turn lane getting off the highway, and there was a left-hand turn lane and a right-hand turn lane, and we were turning left, and there was an 18-wheeler in front of us, and he was over in the right lane, but with the left signal on because he needed the room to swing out. So I waited and let him make his turn and the light was green and the lady behind me was beeping her horn at me because I wasn't moving because I was letting this truck go from the right lane and turn left. And she literally hopped the curb and tried to cut me off, which I was right behind the truck. There was nowhere for her to go. Like we literally almost collided.
It was very close. And you know what? We see that every day. And she did not make any time whatsoever. For like 2 miles down the road, she's right in front of us. And that's a lot of things with truckers. You see that, you appreciate as a trucker what you did because you're looking out your mirror. You're like, yeah, if you have any sense, you'll stay back and let me make the turn.
Yep. And for all you people out there who don't understand physics, these trucks are 80,000 pounds. They cannot maneuver and they cannot stop.
And 70 feet.
Yeah. You cut them off and you hit the brakes. Physics, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. Those trucks cannot stop like a car. So a lot of people get killed because they pull maneuver and then they got to hit the brakes and it's done. So
yeah, and that's a lot of things that truckers, I forget, instantaneously you're looking at like 163 different things. Now I can't count what those are, but somebody came through that was a real quant more than me. But that's what's going on when you're driving a truck, of so many things you have to be aware of. One of the big things is people out there driving it, just like that girl today. That could have cost her life, and she was just impatient, and, but you have to be aware of that.
Yep.
So, and that's been good training for me too. So I don't get mad typically. It's just like, I know, I can sense it. It's almost like a Zen approach. What's going to happen? It's Friday afternoon. I'm in a major city. Somebody's going to pull in front of me and hit the off-ramp instead of just waiting. It's like, what are you doing? Just wait.
And there's many times I'm driving and I'm talking to you and I get cut off and I'm effing them and you're laughing at me like, welcome to my world, right?
Yeah. Because I just like, whatever. And, a funny story about that, about people that, they're not true to themselves up in Minneapolis. And it happened twice in a day. And I had this woman pull up next to me, young girl again, and just flip me off and yelling at me. And what's on the back of her car? Coexist. Coexist. Let's be peaceful. Let's be nice to one another. Oh, wow. Hilarious. So duplicit. Really? And that happened twice in Minneapolis, and I don't know what it was, what Triple T, tall trucker Tom did, but nothing. It just, I don't know. They was probably on some type of psych meds that weren't working. They saw a trucker. I'm probably polluting the environment, and they're eating wheatgrass shakes, and the meds weren't working. I know I'm being a little bit nasty here.
Yeah.
And they just had to react to me why they had their coexist stickers, of love and everything.
So now let's talk about Triple T and what you've done with your experience in trucking. You have created what?
I started a Facebook group. I have about 400 people there. It started fast, and I kind of filtered away for a little bit. Now I'm going to get back into it. We'll have a podcast, YouTube channel, start writing articles. Want to build the following with truckers, to be an advocate for them, to help them raise their standards, to start thinking like they're a top athlete. Same mindset. You want to be respectable, accountable, dependable. And these are the kind of drivers that I believe and know that companies want to hire. That's one facet. The second facet is to work in the corporate side to show them the true leadership of communication, teamwork, and adaptability, which oftentimes they have the right mindset, but execution is terrible. And they don't have a whole lot of accountability. If they're making money, that's good enough, but that is not good enough because things are changing. You have demographics and you have psychographics. The majority of truckers are still in their mid-50s, the average trucker. You can't sustain that. You need younger truckers. Younger truckers act differently. You must treat them differently. Look at our sons, our respective sons. They weren't raised like us. We had to do things differently. Mm-hmm. That's not a negative. It's just a fact. And if companies aren't willing to get down in the weeds and have somebody like me that can talk trucker and corporate, you're going to lose eventually. Mm. You're going to lose. And we're not going to have self-driving trucks in our lifetime. We will get them eventually, but there's too much infrastructure. I support self-driving trucks, but just like if they're driven by computers, computers can go offline like your smartphone. You don't want your truck carrying 80,000 going offline. So there's a lot that has to be put into place yet. But in the meantime, Trucking Warriors, Triple T, Tom Heitz has to be in there helping to uncover and make it good for the truckers who have to raise their standards, and then make it good for the corporate, raise their standards. And when you work together, everything is going to be much better, just like in athletics and real estate, successful real estate, same thing.
So Trucking Warriors is your Facebook page. Can a regular civilian see the page? Is it a public page?
Yeah, if they find it, Trucking Warriors, if they want to look, you have to answer some trucking questions, and eventually the YouTube and the podcast. Those two actually will be good even if you're a non-trucker, because I'll be talking about the mindset, the skill set, heart set. What's heart set? That's how you feel. And people say, well, why is that important? Because everything that drives you is about a feeling. You know, we're not going to go super woo-woo on you, but feelings are important. You know, like in sales, you buy an emotion, you justify with facts later. I mean, love with a significant other, it's not about a spreadsheet. You might think I used a spreadsheet for that, but I didn't. There's emotion with that, right? So it's getting that and putting that in plain English in a way that's understandable, executable, and then teachable and trainable.
We both had our little funks in life. You know, I had a dark period from kind of right after the trading floor to 2013, where I started letting that demon of self-doubt win over me. And of course, I've had traumas too, which this is not about me today. And we really work on our mindset. We work the reframe, right? That's the big thing.
Correct.
So I would say I've seen your transformation in the last 5 years. You are light years away from where you were, and you're the biggest, best, strongest version of yourself that I've ever seen. And probably you might say the same thing. And then the question is, can we ever get bumped off course again? Because I want to believe no, but then it's almost a little too egotistical.
That's a good question. We've talked about it. It's like when we were fighting in the ring and getting beat up, you know, things broken, bruised, bloodied. Can you handle that? Yeah, we could go back and do it now. It'd hurt more now, but we know how to transcend that. And can we get knocked off course? Maybe. I mean, there's always a possibility. But my belief is when you've been to the dark side in the depths of despair so deep, and then you come to grips with that and realize that you was able to be present with that. You did that with Dorothy and her death. You got to be present with that. And when you can be present with that, that's a heck of a skill set. So we probably get knocked off course more than we think, but because we're so trained, it doesn't affect us like it used to. That makes sense?
Yes. And I'm going to circle back with Dorothy in a minute. I look at it this way, because I used to say, I've had my dark times. I'm old and wise now. I'm never going back there again. But that's not reasonable to me. My logical mind says, you don't know, life can bump anybody off course. So my caveat, it's conditional. Life can't bump me off course, provided that I continue to do the work.
You do the work, but see, if you're watching up to this point, you're watching this podcast, I'm saying go back to past episodes, find the one where Frank is talking about the death of his wife that happened earlier this year. And I told him to be present in all of that. So when you tell me, you just ask me that question, then I relay it. You embody that, and that's what I'm telling the viewers of this podcast to go back, and you'll link that up in the show notes and watch that, and you'll see, and you kind of answer that question for people.
Well, you jump in the story. I said I'll circle back to Dorothy, but that's what I wanted to give you credit for that, because Tom and I keep each other accountable, and we do have our struggles, and we help each other through the struggles. And sometimes the struggles are what Tom would say, is PMS, which he says is what?
Poor me stuff.
Yeah, poor me stuff. And when the other guy is saying poor me stuff, we'll just call each other out. That's bullshit. You're acting like a child here. Come on, So when Dorothy got sick, he told me right away. He said, "You're a warrior. You've been on many battlefields, but not this one." And he said, "Be present, pay attention." Getting teary-eyed, and I did. And because I did that, I was able to absorb all the good stuff that came out of it. And it was trauma, and maybe the worst trauma I've ever had, but it made me way better because I was paying attention. And that's part of the thing that I said,
Yeah.
As long as we're working, right, then life can't bump us off course.
So you answered the question you asked me. So that's on a scale of 1 to 10, losing your spouse. That's a leg kick, a punch, and everything all together. So you just basically answered it. When you train, what do they say? What's the saying? When you train in the practice field, you won't bleed as much on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a shot you took on the battlefield and you survived it. You're still going through it. That's normal.
Mm-hmm.
You've processed the grief, unlike some people that, say, oh, you need like 10 therapists and everything. No, I've been your therapist, right? And your other warrior brothers.
Yep.
And the accountability that you got to take yourself. So circling back to your question, I don't think we go back into it and stay there. I think we go into it, but we know how to navigate out of it much better.
Oh,
it's
that's
almost like having an emotional winch on the
Mm-hmm.
front of your truck. You might get stuck, but then you can pull that winch out, throw it around a tree, get yourself out. And that's what you did. You exemplified that. So that's a case study. That's why when you go back and watch the video that he'll have linked, watch that video, and then you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Like sometimes we're on the highway and we're cruising, and sometimes we're stuck in the mud, right? And then we know what we got to do. We got to hook up the winch or put some grabbers under the tires, right? So we do get stuck. That's interesting.
Yeah, it never goes away. It's but if you can train to be resilient, resourceful, and relentless, that's part of my 3 Ps. You know how I like my acronym.
Yeah, you're king of acronyms. You got a whole book of acronyms.
A whole book of acronyms. Now you're trained and you're ready. We talk about morbid things too, like what if this happened? What would we do? How would we feel?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to escape it. Life is not going to let you go scot-free. That's one thing we talk about, maybe with our kids or other people. They haven't been through the storm yet. How are they going to handle? And my thing is like, I don't know how people are going to be part of my warrior brotherhood or sisterhood if they haven't been through something that almost took them out and they survived it. Because that's a person I want on the battlefield, not somebody who's a perpetual victim.
Right.
I'm not this because of my parents, my coach, somebody that sexually abused me. Am I going to let that keep me down? Or is that just going to be a catalyst to say, okay, that sucked, I didn't like it, but now I've got a skill set that I overcame that. That's what you and I and other people are most proud of. So yeah, to go back to your question, if we go into that part, we know how to walk out of it because we've been there a few times.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Another thing we share in common is trying to help empower people so they learn some of these techniques. They learn how to deal with the trauma, overcome it, and become victors and not victims. And you and I, it's terrible but funny. We'll play like we're role playing being a victim when we're busting each other's balls.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because so many people, and in this day and age, it's a trauma Olympics. That's a new sport. Well, you don't know what I went through, and it's like, are you carrying the torch into the stadium here to compete for the trauma Olympics? Well, mine was worse than yours. You don't know what I went through. Oh, I had this rendition. Okay, whatever.
And we'll play that out. Like you'll tell me, I can't believe you think you make award-winning mac and cheese with Velveeta. And I'll go, you're shaming me because I use Velveeta and you don't know how good it is. You're just doing that because I'm I'm only 5'9", and we'll role play that out because it's hilarious, and people
It's
are
training.
like that.
It's training. We train ourselves on that to not be offended,
Yeah.
The only thing I think that might be that you could stay as a victim if you were impregnated by an alien, came to bear that child and forced to eat that child.
Okay. There you go. That's the dark
my
energy
darkness.
making stuff up
Now,
right there.
If you at home watching this, if that has happened to you, please let us know because we'd like to study you.
Yeah, that'll make a heck of a podcast.
And make a heck of a podcast there. But that's how dark we get sometimes. But maybe with that, you might have a reason to say you can be a victim. But if you've had anything short of that, you can heal it. You can do it. There's ways to do it. People can help you. And in all seriousness, if you feel like, that life isn't worth living, it is.
Yep.
Reach out for help. There's suicide hotlines. There's people. Talk to somebody. Do not let it go. We had a couple friends that we know collectively. I got really worried when, who was the chef? Bourdain, Kate Spade. There's multimillionaire, famous people. They took themselves out.
Yeah, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, a lot of people. Money does not, and I've been around a lot of people with money, doesn't absolve you of, the pain that you have to eventually heal. Do something about it. There's people that care.
And I want to share this lesson that I learned with you guys out there. I used to kind of belittle therapy because so many people aren't on therapy, and I do believe in our society we overprescribe it, and there's a lot of bad therapists out there, and there's good ones too, just like anything else. But in my egotistical part of my brain, I'm like, well, all therapists have therapists, and it's true. Like a therapist will even tell you that. I meant it almost in a belittling way, but then I realized, hey, idiot, you're getting therapy almost every day. I mean, Tommy Heitz and I, we at least communicate every day, but usually we will have 1 to 2 hour conversation because I'm working out and he's in the truck, and then we loop in other friends often. And now, before you know it, you're having 2 to 3 hours of conversation trying to work through your problems with somebody who cares about you wholeheartedly and is going to do everything in their power. So for you people out there who are maybe in a little bit of suffering, pick up the phone, call somebody and talk to somebody, anybody of your friends, because that in itself is rejuvenating.
I had one person tell me one time, you just like doing these things to hear yourself talk. Naturally, okay, I agree. That's part of it. But the big mission that you and I have, Frank, and other people is if we can help somebody, and we have helped people. Your podcast already has helped people. They've reached out to you and thanked you. Things that I've done, interviews I've done and been disclosing of this, help people. And so we're on that mission. And you can be that same way too out there. If you've been through the darkness and you've overcome it, then be a supportive friend to some other person.
Yep. Each one teach one.
Yeah. And encourage them too. And especially, we're in our 60s now that generation said, no, just suck it up and do whatever. It doesn't have to be like that because many times that doesn't work.
Right.
And you need to get help. And that's okay because we're stronger because of what we did in talking about this. And again, we're not in the trauma Olympics, mine wasn't worse than yours or vice versa. It's just what happens. And the thing is that we're tough about that we've overcome it. We've accepted it. We've been into the feelings. And then we take that feeling, then we make it something useful. I call it life's manure. That shit stinks, but it can be put into the ground with nutrients and it'll make something grow better.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the power of the reframe.
Yes.
Do you think everybody's had some sort of trauma?
I think so.
I do too.
And if they haven't, they're going to. It's something in life. That'd be a good case study to see. And you might find some people that are older say, nothing's happened to me. And they may have compartmentalized it. Because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I'd have said nothing other than my brother dying. Mm-hmm. And maybe not even have mentioned that because I'm tough. I'm a Heitz. I have tough parents. You gut it out.
Yeah.
Didn't have trauma. What was that? No, that was nothing. Rub some dirt on it and keep going.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this too, about epigenetics and things that get passed down. And I just had this talk with my youngest son. We were talking about the job world. And he's, telling me things that will reflect he's not quite secure in himself. And I'm like, look, your mom was a freaking go-getter. She had 3 jobs at one time. I'm a go-getter. You got our blood in you. You can't talk that down. It's there. You have that machine is built. It's already built in you. All you got to do is hit the gas.
And sometimes, that's interesting because those are genetics. And what Frank was talking about, epigenetics, are things that you can change. Like I can't change the genetics of my height, of my bone structure, which is another thing. People say, well, I can't lose weight because I'm big bone. I'm like, you're full of crap. My bones are bigger than yours.
Literally.
And they're heavier. So don't tell me the big bone. Just get out there and stop eating so much crap and exercise a little bit, and you'll thin down a little bit. Epigenetics is what you can do with your mind. Because there's people that I talk to that have lost family member like me 40 years ago. They still can't get over it. They're blaming the people. I never blamed the person that was drunk that killed my brother. It was weird, but no, because I know that wasn't, she didn't mean to do that. It just happened, unfortunate. But I chose to change the scenario and not be a victim, And maybe that's part of the genetics. I didn't have that in my family. But there's other things in my family now, the epigenetics, I talk about things and share with others, not because I want people to feel sorry for me, but because I want to be a beacon of hope and leadership for somebody to maybe not end it all, or maybe to have a much better life like I have now, because I am truly happy now. This is not a fake. How you feel? Oh, great. When you ask me, how you feel, Tom? I feel great. I really do. I might get a little irritated, angry sometimes.
But you're aware of it.
But I'm aware of it. And that's the key. I'm aware of it, and then work to reframe it and say, despite that, everything is good. I have a great life. I got people who love me, and that's a good thing. And I could die tomorrow. So I'm going to live today the best I can.
Yep. We think about that all the time. You're the one that told me that I was a Stoic, which I didn't even understand, which is it's a Greek philosophy of Stoicism. And the Stoics believed, they subscribe to memento mori, which means remember you will die. And they don't do it in a morbid way. They do it so we live our best lives right now. And I've reframed my life that I haven't lived a good full life. I've lived 2 good full lives now. That's how I feel. So I don't have any fear anymore. Very little stress. I don't even know what stresses me out anymore. It's just if there's a problem, then there's a solution. I shift right into solution mode, but I am enjoying my life as well. And one of the things you and I discovered, which is like cheating life, is just kindness.
Yeah.
And like you'll be on the road and you'll meet somebody in the yard who's managing the yard, and they helped you out, and you get out of the truck, you go take a picture with them, a selfie, and you tell the story about that person. Hey, this is John Smith. He really helped me today, blah, blah, blah. They love taking pictures with you. It's just a little gesture of kindness that maybe makes their day. You put it on Trucking Warriors. It's like cheating in life. You get more return than you actually gave, right?
People can do that all day long. Now, being an athlete and somewhat of a celebrity in Kentucky playing basketball, what's interesting now is I have people send me pictures of things that I've signed for them 40, 45 years ago. There was a picture when he was a little kid, and now as an adult, I re-signed it. This was in January when we had our 40th anniversary of being in the Final Four. And it's funny that some of these people are grandparents now.
Wow.
And so that was a celebrity part. But now being on the road, I realize that anybody can do that because I'm just engaging people. How's your day? Tell me how you got into trucking. We don't get that. People don't do that. They're too busy on social media, just doom scrolling or just caring about themselves, or haven't learned how to take care of their own mental health. So if they haven't taken care of their own mental health, then how are they going to help somebody else? That's the tragedy today. So what you and I do is we care about people. You have your thing with veterans and people like that, telling their stories, and they need that. They need to be heard. It's common. It's okay. And people say, I'm a self-made man or whatever. That's the most narcissistic person out there. You didn't come into this world by yourself, and you needed people.
Yep.
My basketball career, everything about me, yes, I had to take the initiative, but I had people helping me. And so I'm just paying it forward now of acknowledging people, using my skill set like you, opening people up, letting them tell their story, and it's very healing. So we're kind of like non-board certified physicians ourselves.
I think part of the reason why we have the superpower of opening people up is because we genuinely want to hear their story, right?
Yeah.
And they can feel that. And everybody wants to tell their story. That's why I love the podcast. I want people to come on and tell their story.
Yeah, I'm telling my story. Hear me, you know, worship me.
You've had trauma, Tom. You've had a lot of trauma.
I've had a lot of trauma, so please feel sorry for me.
And then
we kid about that, but you know, but it is a common thing. Like you said, people want to be acknowledged. In trucking, number one thing, well, there's three things in trucking, and then we'll come back to that. Adequate home time, adequate pay. Number one thing is respect.
Yeah.
Respect. And so just as in trucking, in real life, you know, people want to feel respected. And so that's what we provide by not talking about us, but opening them up. Well, tell me about your service or whatever it may be.
So respect, we've talked a lot about respect in our conversations. And my godmother, Mary Kay, who is still alive, she is my oracle, if you know the Matrix movie. She taught me that respect is more important than love. And I agree with that because you can inherit love. Your child is born, you love them. Your child, you're their father, they love you. But respect is a higher plateau. And respect to me is more important than love, too. So all of my actions based on what I do are about respect. And then the way I interpret actions toward me, I'm founded in respect, you know. So that's the first thing. And then something you said before about narcissistic, you know, self-made. This is one of my proverbs in my book. And it says, nobody is self-made. Everybody has a lot of help getting to where they want to be, right? Or getting to where they are. We all have had tons of help. And to your point, right out of the womb, we can't survive on our own. What do you mean you're self-made? Like you were born and then like you just got up and started walking around and dressing yourself and feeding yourself? No. So we've all had a lot of help to get where we are.
Well, I mean, you talk about that. Let's talk about my basketball career. I had to have good coaches to be patient with me. In elementary school, middle school, high school, I had to have the janitors would let me in the gym sometimes. Lunch ladies could have been mean. They were nice. Teachers, most of them were good. Some of them were jerks. Most of them were good. And the coaches, people in the community. So there was a lot of people that had their hand in my basketball success. My teammates, my classmates. You know, sometimes they don't see that, but I see it. And I always give them acknowledgement, you know, for that. You know, there was an interview that I did on making the 20 silver anniversary team in Indiana high school basketball. And the article was about, you know, everybody that I gave props to, you know, in the community, everything. I said, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. You know, yeah, I had to work hard. I was talented. I was blessed with that. I had good parents. But it took a whole village to raise a child. You know, and I was that one child that the village, you know, raised.
Yep, and then you had to have your family get you all the way through to college. I mean, we've been carried along. And it's very serving for us to understand that. It is not serving of us to think we did it all on our own. I don't see how that's beneficial, that anyone says I'm self-made. So nobody is self-made.
It's ego, and you haven't hit the dark bottom and been able to where you have no other hope or options, where you have to get real. Or if you don't get real, some people, you know, take that checkered flag of life on their own.
Yep. All right, my friend, what else haven't we covered that you have a lot of notes because you are very granular? Is there anything else we want to get to?
That's triggering me. Now I'm going back to the trauma.
Triggered.
I'm triggered. You know, speaking about influence, you know, it's interesting how people, as a Kentucky basketball player, say, well, you know, everybody likes you. And even in trucking now, you know, they know me as Triple T because they've seen a podcast or on social media where you know, people like you. And I'm like, I'm no different than you. You gathered that like or respect by just giving people the respect. And that's one thing that I see is respect. And there's a great story, and I have ton of them about the celebrities that I've met through basketball. And one of the most telling ones is, if you're a country music fan from way back, you'll know this. But anyways, we go to Vanderbilt. They're in our conference, and University of Kentucky. So we're down there. So we're always doing public service things or branding ourselves, marketing. So we go to the Grand Ole Opry. I could care less about country music at the time. So we pull up to the Grand Ole Opry, and this old guy is out there outside the bus, greets us, and this is common practice, and we thought it was just, a local fan or whatever. We're getting out the bus. He's shaking the hands, shakes my hand, and looks at me and said, "How you doing, Tom? How's your parents doing back up there in Indiana?" And
This guy didn't even know.
I have no idea who he is. Just no guy, fan, whatever. We get on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry, and I guess this guy was a little more important because he introduced us. Thought, well, he's just a worker there. Introduced the Kentucky basketball to people in the Grand Ole Opry. People cheer a little bit, and then we go away. This happens all the time, And I get home and I make my weekly collect call to my parents in Indiana from Nashville. And I said, "Dad, I know you like country music. We went to the Grand Ole Opry." He's like, "Oh, you meet anybody? Any stars?" And I'm like, "Nah, just some old guy." Introduced us, named Roy. He's like, "Roy Acuff?" I'm like, "I don't know who's that." "Roy Acuff." "Roy Acuff, the Grand Ole Opry." I'm like, "Still don't know." Well, long story short, Roy Acuff is on a U.S. postage stamp, and I'm not.
And that was the old guy who introduced you.
That's the old guy, Roy Acuff. Anybody in country music knows Roy Acuff. Like I said, he's on a U.S. postage stamp, and Triple T is not.
That's hilarious.
So the point and the lesson and all that is the professionalism. He cared. He did what you and I did. I did find out he was a Kentucky basketball fan. He passed away, but he did his research. And he got to know everybody a little bit about him, and he paid respect to me.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So that, when I look back on it, that's a true leader, taught me a good lesson right there. He knew me. I didn't know who he was. Right.
And I think that's part of the superpower of our social interactions with people. It's respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk to everybody. I don't care who, right? We will talk to everybody.
Oh, yeah. And then, another one, well, this was 12 years ago. I was speaking at these NCAA functions, academic functions, and there was one in Florida where I was a side speaker, a breakout speaker, and then the main speaker was Spike Lee, the famous filmmaker.
Of course.
And so I love Spike Lee movies and everything.
I do too.
After he was done, we got to meet him. I got my picture with him. And at the time, my nephew, who we'll have to talk about that, Brad, who played in the NBA, played for the Bulls. I said, "Yeah, my nephew is Brad Miller." He goes, "Oh, yeah, he's a great player," and all that. So I go to Spike, and I'm thinking I'm giving him props. And I say, "You ever think about doing a movie like you did Do the Right Thing, like making one called Do the White Thing about the lack of white players in the NBA?"
Which is funny.
Funny. I mean, I was just thinking, giving him props, playing off his movie. And he looked at me, and that look, and at that moment, you're like, "Oh, I guess that didn't land too well." He goes, "I'll take that into consideration."
That's a funny story.
So it might have been inappropriate or whatever, but I just thought, hey, what the heck? So that's a Spike Lee story. And then, we've met Al Gore. He was a lowly state senator from Tennessee, came into practice, didn't know who he was. Dick Butkus came. That was kind of cool.
Nice.
So
I'd rather meet Dick Butkus than Al Gore. So.
Yeah. So back in the 80s, you knew who he was. So that was kind of cool. So we got to meet a lot of nice people. And then probably one of the celebrity stories with Kentucky basketball was 2012. I was at the inauguration, was invited in D.C. They always have a Kentucky contingency there. So we're there. Phyllis George Brown was there. Got to talk to her again. Met her when I was in school. Very nice lady. Just passed away last year. Ashley Judd was there. The actress. She's an alumni like I am.
A beautiful lady too.
Yeah. So we're there, and I say, "Hey, I'd like to ask you for a picture because you've got my autograph." And she looked at me. I said, "You've got one of the basketballs signed from 1984 because one of my teammates, Sam Bowie's, you told him that you have the basketball signed by him in 1984. So I'm on that. So you got my autograph. I'd like a picture with you." She goes, "Oh, that's fine."
Nice.
So we got a picture together.
I seen that picture before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all these great people that we got to meet, and that was just an interesting ride. That could be a whole podcast itself, on the basketball. So there was a lot of good things, and I met a lot of great people there. And the big thing is the people that I'm so proud of myself for being told, how to be a respectable person. And now it comes back 40 years later of people saying, "You were always nice to me when I was a little kid. You signed my autograph." And probably a story from 1979, the summer before my freshman year. So I was supposed to meet with one of the boosters. It was set up by an assistant coach, Dwayne Casey. I'm in Southern Indiana with Mr. Basketball. I was like number 2 in the state, Steve Bushy. We were on his watermelon farm, drinking beer, working hard on the farm. I was supposed to be in Lexington, Kentucky, go to this dinner with them, didn't show up. Like, what the heck? That's not like me, but I did it there. And I remember getting a call from Coach Casey. He had played ball at Kentucky, then he went on to be a coach in the NBA. He said, "Tom, that's not very becoming or leader-like of a Kentucky basketball player or a man."
Wow.
And I'm like,
That's powerful.
yee. Because I wasn't known to do things like that, but I thought, what the heck, I'm having fun. It's just a booster or whatever. And so that was a good lesson. That was a reframe. So that never happened again. And that's why you need people like that, not to sit back and kowtow to you or yell at you, but give you a good lesson. So Dwayne Casey was a good leader.
That's awesome.
In that moment.
What he was doing is he was preaching accountability to you. And one of the disconnects you and I have with some people, and this would be with victims, is that a lot of people come to us for advice and help and whatever, because that's what we attract. We always get down to accountability, and victims don't want to hear about that.
Yeah, you gotta clean up your own mess first. How about that?
You call it personal agency. You told
Personal
me that.
agency, yeah. Especially let's say you're in a relationship. But so-and-so, she's so bad, this and that, did this, did that. I'm like, look, you had to be at the scene of the crime as well. You had to say, "I do" as well, right?
Right.
Well, did you say "I do"? Okay. Then you participated in this. Now deal with it. It may sound simple, but if you're somebody that always dates people, bad people, "Oh, I always just get bad people," whatever. You need to look in the mirror who you're attracting. You need to look in the mirror. Why are you attracting them? "Oh, I'm just got bad luck." No, it's you. You're getting bad luck because you're causing that. And that's very difficult for people to accept. Yeah, but you don't know what happened to me. And this is where the trauma Olympics come back in. You don't realize what happened to me, what my father did, what my mother did. My father left. My mother left. My siblings didn't treat me well. I was abused, sexually abused. I was verbally abused, emotionally. Okay. So what are you going to do about it now? You're accountable. You have 3 things. Things that the world does to you, things that other people do to you, and things you do to yourself. You're responsible for all 3. Well, no, I didn't do that. That wasn't my fault. I didn't say it was your fault or not. I said it's your responsibility to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
You do the same thing. And many people don't want to hear that. They want an excuse. But if you keep running those excuses, keep participating in the trauma Olympics, I don't care if you win the gold medal, you're going to lose. You're not going to feel good, and you're not going to live your best life. And that's one thing that you and I are both thankful for. We've been hit by all 3. What life has done to us, other people, and what we've done to ourselves. We've taken accountability for all 3 of those. And that's where it gives you the biggest strength, the biggest bang for your buck.
It's actually freeing, because then you're actually in control, right? When you're a victim, you're out of control. And when you're a victor, you realize, I've steered my ship right here. I did this.
And you can say, some people can take the control. Well, no, God will be in control or whatever. So let me clarify that, at least in my rendition. We're in control of ourselves. We can't be in control of what's happened out there externally because things will happen. You had no control over Dorothy dying, but you had control over how you experienced it and continue to. And you're almost through a whole yearly cycle, which we've talked about that.
Right, the seasons.
Yeah, the seasons, but you've been through that. So you've taken responsibility on how you feel, you know? Can't change what happened to her, but you can only influence how you feel. And you've done a great job with that. And that's a testament to other people. And that's what's inspiring other people. It's like, well, why didn't he be devastated? Well, you're going to get hit with those grief bullets, like you say.
Yeah.
But you're demonstrating, we both do, on different things that when you take responsibility for everything, that is everything in your life. That's how you're going to live your best life and feel the best.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean everything is always going to be easy. And that goes back to, can we ever go back into that darkness? Well, we can go back into it, but we just don't stay in it.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because that was a dark time for you. You just can't say, oh, I just toughed it out. No, it sucked.
Yeah.
It sucked. But you took the steps, you became present, and that's the testament to a successful life there. You're not going to avoid those, but what you can do is train yourself, which we do for ourselves and work with others, to be the best version of yourself. And number one thing, accountability, personal agency.
Well, my friend, what else would you like to cover? You've satisfied my my checklist today.
There were so many things. I mean, we covered quite a bit. It's almost like we have to have a message, call to action for people. I think we've done a lot of that. You know, number one, you have anything that you feel that's mental. I mean, physical, you know how to take care of. Something hurts or something goes bad, you go to the doctor. Mentally, take that as a testament of strength to yourself that you start dealing with that and that's a good thing. And don't shy away and say, well, I'm just tough. That doesn't affect me, because both Frank and I both felt like that at one time, and that was almost our downfall. You know, and a lot of people, we're just going to tough this out. You are not tough if you try to tough it out. Let me tell you that right now. You are not tough if you try to tough it out. Because what happens with most people, you won't hear this, but you're going to hear it now. You may not see it what you think it is, but when you have bad feelings and unprocessed grief and trauma, it affects your physical, cancer, cardio, diabetic. People don't talk about that, but I know, when we know of studying this, all that stress that you don't express will matriculate into your physical body.
Yep.
That is so huge. So huge.
Yep. The mind has the power to heal us or kill us.
Exactly.
And most of us, we abuse that power. We don't use it to serve us.
Oh, and then just one other thing. You know how a lot of people say you never know what somebody else is going through? You don't. And just have some empathy and know that when people go off on you, like that lady that cut us off today, the young girl, who knows what's going on in her life? Because that was uncalled for. It was stupid. But who knows what's going on in her life? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was a little benevolent seeing that, like, oh my God, she almost just crashed into us and threw us into the truck. So there's a problem there. So what my mindset is tonight or whatever, I just send a little prayer to her. I don't know who she is. You know, bless her, give her some peace and freedom or whatever. My saying is, you learn how to play the game, or the game's going to play you. People say
one of your benchmark sayings, right there.
That's a benchmark saying. And people say, I don't want to play games. You're in a game. You come out of the womb to the tomb, you're in a game. So learn how to play the game, or the game's going to play you.
Yep. All right, my friend. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, what would be your level of happiness and fulfillment right now?
Probably 9.
How come I'm a 10 all the time then? What am I doing that you're not doing?
You're sleeping in your own bed all the time.
Yeah, but you're technically more tougher than me. You have a higher degree of survivability.
I'm in the survivor mode right now, driving a truck and certain things. So when I'm in the truck and I get a good night's sleep and I have some nice ground fresh coffee that's been locally roasted, then I'm at a 10 there.
All right, so you're fluctuating between 9 and 10. That's pretty good. My contention is if you're nailing it correctly, you're always a 10. You reframe it into I am a 10. It's not, maybe it is not even possible, but I try to make it possible. So
I always want something I got to attain. I mean, you can't go to 11. 10's the best, so I got to sometimes cut myself down a little bit so I can have something to work towards.
all right, big brother. Grateful Life brought us together. You can be found on Trucking Warriors on Facebook if you want to see where some of your on-road posts are going. YouTube channel in the works.
If you just Google TomHeitz, there's so much on there that you'll find, whether it's the personal items or the professional, LinkedIn, whatever. If you just Google my name, then I'm all over the place.
Okay, awesome. And the title of your book is?
Right now, the working title is 18 Months on 18 Wheels, A Journey to Healing, something like that.
And you were the one who prompted me to write a book. You're like, just do it.
And I'm looking at the book there, and you've got it done, and I haven't yet. So I'm kind of fugazi right now.
Well, you're getting it done, though. So, so grateful life brought us together, brother. I have learned a lot from you. We're feeding off each other. 2 half brains does make a full brain in this case. And tonight we eat some steaks and some of my fake macaroni and cheese with the Velveeta cheese, and we'll get your opinion on that. So thanks for coming on, my friend.
My pleasure. And I hope that people get some tremendous value from this. Know that what I shared with you today, like I said, it's not about my story. It's hopefully, and this is why I'm rewriting my book for the 3rd time, that I'm telling and sharing somebody else's story.
Yep.
That they can relate and say there is light at the end of the tunnel and there is hope, because your trauma or whatever is maybe similar, maybe different, and it is what it is. But again, learn to play the game or the game's going to play you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our podcast with my dear friend and big brother, Tommy Heitz. We call him Triple T, Tall Trucker Tom. We'll see you at our next podcast. And please remember, there is a warrior inside us all. Take care of everybody.